Before the meeting starts, I'd like to remind members to make sure you turn your microphones on if they wish to speak and turn them off when you've finished. I would also remind members that there is a briefing after this meeting, which will be taking place immediately after the meeting, and lunch is being provided. I would normally say, Julie, start the recording, but it's already going. A possible point of order could be raised by Councillor Burt.
Have we started the meeting? So the monitoring officer has received my complaint that that the correct procedure was not followed in calling this meeting, in that I did not receive a summons and agenda pack within the time specified by Schedule 12, Part 1 of the 1972 Local Government Act. There is an exception specified in the legislation, but that does not apply in this case. And I want to be clear that this problem is being created by the actions of the most senior staff of the council. I am not in any way criticising the admin staff. Now, I did see a message from the monitoring officer saying that the council solicitor says that nothing in my complaint would render this meeting invalid. But as usual, there is no explanation whatsoever. So if we're to continue, perhaps you could please explain why Schedule 12 Part 1 does not apply, because the text of the legislation seems to say that this meeting would be invalid.
Rob, will you answer, please?
Thank you, Chairman. As Councillor Burt suggested, he made a formal complaint yesterday, which will go through our formal process and will be dealt with accordingly. He's quite correct. I had the opportunity to take the advice of the solicitor of the council, who advised ahead of this meeting that nothing raised in the email or complaint submitted by Councillor Burt would render today's meeting of full council invalid, or any of the resolutions made at the said meeting, this meeting, invalid either. I don't propose to go into the detail behind that. The advice of the solicitor is clear. We will investigate the complaint more fully following our full process. Thank you, Chairman.
Julie, will you call the roll, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Ashby, Councillor Askew, Councillor Atterwill, Councillor Bambridge, Councillor Burt, Councillor Borrett, Councillor Bowes, Councillor Brame, Councillor Brindle, Councillor Bushell, Councillor Marion Chapman-Allen, Councillor Sam Chapman-Allen,
Present.
Councillor Clark,
Present.
Councillor Clausen,
Yeah.
Councillor Cowan,
Yeah.
Councillor Crane, Councillor Dale, Councillor Dowling, Councillor Duffield, Councillor Dygan, Councillor Eagle, Councillor Gilbert, Councillor Gray, Councillor Hambidge, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Hewitt, Councillor James, Councillor Jeremy, Councillor Cadell, Councillor Kittle-Morris, Councillor Kybird, Councillor Land, Councillor Martin, Councillor Monument, Councillor Morton, Councillor Nairn, Councillor Nunn, Councillor Oliver, Councillor Plummer, Councillor Sherwood, Councillor Suggett, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Terry, Councillor Turner, Councillor Webb, Councillor Wickerson, Councillor Wilkin, and Councillor Wilkinson.
Are there any further apologies? Apologies, rather.
Hello, thank you, Tim. Did you receive apologies from Roy Brain?
to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of December 2022, pages 6 to 20 of the agenda pack. These have all been circulated. Are you all satisfied they're a true record? Any abstentions? Yeah, I wasn't here. Councillor Wilkinson to sign the declarations of interest. Are any members, if they have any declarations to declare on any item on the agenda? On Chairman's announcements. First and foremost, you may or not be aware, is that February is an important month for our Pride of Breckland Cares campaign. In this month, the LGBT community and its allies seek to raise further awareness of prejudice experienced by the LGBT community, and specifically the history of the movement and some of the key events in the history that led to greater acceptance, rights, and inclusion. It is celebrated to coincide with when the first LGBT History Month was celebrated in February 2005. It follows a key point in history in 2003 when the government removed Section 28 of the Local Government Act. Prior to its removal, that section of the Act prohibited local authorities, mainly from educational purpose, from intentionally promoting homosexuality and teaching about the acceptability of homosexuality. The staff have several activities to promote LGBT History Month during February, as well as the main Pride campaign later this year. It has already created greater awareness and started conversations both in and outside the council. And I'm proud to say we are an inclusive employer. Earlier this month, I had the pleasure of awarding 4 residents with the special recognitions. They were all very special people. First and foremost was Sue Gattison from Swaffham. She took over the running of the museum and has promoted Swaffham heritage, and she also introduced the tribute to Howard Carter on the centenary of his discovery of the Tutankhamun. If you haven't been to the museum, I would suggest it's well worth a visit. The other one was Susan Douglas and Anne Havison, both of whom have served their respective communities at Longham and at Cressing Hall for a long, long time, and have really made a very great, worthwhile contribution to their local communities. The fourth was Graham Jacobs, who has been running Studio 5 in Setford for 70 years now. I started buying my films and cameras from there around about in 1973, 74. And the changes that he's seen and what have you and adapted to are absolutely phenomenal. We had a tremendous response in respect of the award for him. And as I say, all 4 are truly deserving. And I'd like to thank the members for nominating them. Thank you.
Chairman, if I may, I just want to place on record my thanks to you for what you've done with the Unsung Heroes Award. I think that's a great initiative. I know Sue Douglas and Anne Havison in my ward greatly appreciated you turning out and presenting them with the award. And I hope that more members will sort of look to do that for people in their own communities. But I just wanted to place on record my thanks for the effort that you put in for those 2 awards. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, I would now invite the leader to make his announcement.
Lovely, thank you, Chairman, and good morning, members. I'm Couple of items just want to pick up today with colleagues, and I want to start off with Watton Skate Park. And I'm sure, like me, a number of you have been watching in awe around the amazing achievements of young Sky Brown, the new world skateboarding champion at just 14 years old. And not only has Sky won the World Championships, but she's also Great Britain's youngest Olympic medal winner when she won that bronze medal back in the Tokyo Games of 2020. I'm therefore delighted, Chairman, to announce the latest community investment of £107,000 to fund a new skate park in the community of Watton. This is just the latest investment in our communities made by this council and means a new generation of Breckland skateboarders can enjoy this positive physical well-being and social effects, all associated with skateboarding and skating, whilst also potentially enable them to follow in Sky's fantastic footsteps or wheels, and possibly even bring back the gold medal to Breckland for the future Olympics. I'd like to acknowledge all the hard work in bringing this project to fruition, including the support of local ward members and particularly Councillor Tina Cadell, who has been very passionate prior to becoming a councillor and throughout her time, and in fact spamming my inbox constantly around this issue. And of course, Councillor Wilkinson as our representative on the Breckland YAB for supporting that community in driving this forward. Chairman, I want to talk around Barnham Broom. As members will be aware, this council has faced repeated calls for information related to one of its proposed commercial transactions to be made public. We have, Chairman, under legal advice and officer advice, resisted this. In dealing with this matter appropriately and confidentially, we have sought to do what is best in protecting the sensitive commercial interests of a third-party business operating in Norfolk. It is therefore unfortunate, Chairman, that a member of this council felt it necessary to challenge this stance through the Information Commissioner's Office. This has, Chairman, resulted in significant officer time and resource that has been taken away from important work being undertaken by this council to support both residents and businesses. This member's action, Chairman, has cost this council £15,000 in unnecessary legal fees. Money that could have been better spent on other projects elsewhere. I'm pleased, Chairman, to inform members today that following the first tier tribunal in the General Regulatory Chamber, our stance has been fully scrutinised and found to be correct. To quote directly from the findings, the tribunal have pursued without reservation that this council acted appropriately. I'm pleased that this council's stance has been declared sound. I'm pleased that this council has been found to be appropriately sought to protect the interests of local businesses. Chairman, I hope this now draws a matter to a close on this issue and those concerns raised by that member. I hope that it provides the residents with the reassurance that this council continues to operate appropriately and legally and ensures that our tenants and organisations with whom we work in partnership with we will always do the right thing and always within the law. We will fight to protect their commercial interests and, more importantly, Chairman, protect jobs for local people who employ them across our district and our county. Chairman, more positive, I want to move on to the position around a fantastic announcement you made around a royal visit taking place shortly next month to the district of Breckland. So I want to take this opportunity to put on record my thanks to all the council officers and your office, Chairman, for making this happen. Her Royal Highness the Princess Royal comes to Elm House in Thetford and she'll witness firsthand the difference Breckland Council has made with partners to the lives of our residents. This £1.8 million redevelopment project has seen a disused community building turned back into much needed temporary accommodation for people in our community, supporting those who find themselves homeless or at risk of becoming homeless. On her visit at the end of March, Princess Anne will also have the opportunity to see a further investment made by this council and partners of £1.2 million in brand new temporary accommodation being built on that site, which is nearly finished. This shows once again that Breckland Council is a district that delivers. We invest in our services, we make a real difference to our residents, including those who are particularly vulnerable, and we support them throughout their challenges. I'm confident that the Princess Royal will leave Breckland impressed as how districts care, but more importantly, Breckland District delivers. Chairman, you've been made aware through the Cabinet member around our support for money debt advice. And this subject has gone through the financial positions and decisions, and I'm pleased to confirm now that those individuals are now coming on board to inform that stronger partnership with the Citizens Advice Bureau. This will be an additional £85,000 per year this council has invested on top of the £50,000 given annually, and we'll see money debt advisors dedicated to Breckland Council, dedicated to Breckland residents, delivering that integrated support at both our Dereham office and Thetford office, but supporting every resident across our community. This is us working side by side on frontline services using the CAB's expert advisors to give that independent welfare money debt advice, which is needed across every part of our community. And I'm pleased that Breckland has stood its place with that £85,000 worth of investment year on year. And finally, Chairman, the situation we find ourselves in with Ukraine. And of course, every individual across our fantastic district stands side by side with those individuals who are impacted by the conflict taking place. And this Friday, Chairman, we have our opportunity once again to reconfirm our solidarity with the people of Ukraine and the country as a whole, and our unwavering support. As a nation, we send a clear signal, our enduring support for Ukraine in the face of Russian aggression, and a mark of respect for the bravery and sacrifice of all those individuals in Ukraine. Here at Breckland, we're helping 143 Ukrainians who have fled aggression, including 54 children. And I was very grateful that I had the opportunity to meet with some of those just after Christmas and hear about the challenging, heroic efforts they've made to flee that, but also some of the challenges their friends and family are still facing back at home. I'm once again, Chairman, proud to support everybody in this room, our partners, residents, and third sector organisations and officers who provided for those individuals over these last couple of months. It's not going to stop there, and we will continue to offer that support for as long as they need it, whether they're in our community or back home in Ukraine. So I hope members will join me and others across this nation on Friday at 11 a.m, marking our national moment of silence to remember those individuals who are facing persecution and challenge and the abhorrent aggression of Russian fighters. And the final bit, Chairman, sorry, there was one more. The Local Government Chronicle Awards. Everyone will be aware of the LGC Awards take place annually, and I'm delighted that this council has been recognised for our £1 million innovation around inspiring communities. This is a long-going activity which members will be aware of. It's supporting those most vulnerable in our community and ensure that we can continue to deliver that project for in partnership with others beyond the time of this council. We are aware that health and social care is not traditionally a space which district councils operate in. So to be recognised for this excellent work and to be a finalist shows a real marker at how Breckland District Council has supported all of its residents in some of those most challenging circumstances. We are up against tough opposition, but I'm sure all members will join with me in congratulating the team, partners behind the programmes for their achievements to date and for keeping our fingers crossed that we get announced as the winners in June. Thank you, Chairman.
We'll now move on to questions on notice under Standing Order number 6. The questions, together with the responses, have been published prior to this full council meeting as a supplementary paper to this agenda, and any follow-up questions can be asked under agenda item 7. We'll now move on to questions without notice under Standing Order number 7. The questions will be directed to the leader or relevant portfolio holder. These questions can relate to the leader's announcements and any supplementary questions on notice and any questions without notice in line with Standing Order number 7. Councillor Jeremy.
Good morning, Chairman. Thank you. Good morning, Sam. Sam, I'm going to ask you about devolution because it limps along in Norfolk, and I was interested to pick up one of these nice glossy consultation brochures recently. No expense spared, of course, but sadly I didn't see many members of the public taking one. I was interested to learn in the press that Breckland Council was joining the pre-action protocol to potentially legally challenge the devolution proposals. And whilst in our cabinet system, you don't have to consult all members, I hope at least you did consult Conservative group members before you made the decision. Given your previous comments and reluctance to spend money on legal costs, could you confirm how much money has been set aside by this council to support those legal costs in relation to challenging devolution?
Thanks, Chairman. To date, this council has incurred no cost in the pre-action protocol. As you can see from the emergent budget, we've got existing budget allocations for legal fees. If this council was minded to, it would be a full council decision to take anybody to judicial review, then those budget allocations will be presented in that report at that moment in time.
Councillor Atterwell.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is for Councillor Crane. It's been reported in the press that Serco employees have voted for strike action. What contingencies have the council put in place to mitigate any disruption for residents?
Thank you, Councillor Atwell. Our priority, as you know, is to maintain the service provision for our residents, and we hope industrial action can be avoided. However, in case the strike does go ahead, our supplier Serco has contingency plans in place to help mitigate the impact, including drafting in staff from other Serco services to cover gaps.
Councillor Burt.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to direct my question to the leader. And to start with, I'm going to need to frame my question. Previously, I've dared to claim that certain aspects of this council's actions have been mediocre. And that has resulted in a standards complaint being made against me. I've been lied to by a previous chief executive officer, and I've got documentary evidence of false statements by other senior officers. I've had my microphone cut multiple times, despite not breaking any rules and having a constitutional right to speak. I have repeatedly been denied the opportunity to ask questions when committee minutes are presented. This has been formally investigated twice, and both times it was found that the Constitution was breached by not allowing questions. Now, I have a very long list of other examples which appear to show that by fair means or foul, you'd rather not hear my questions. So, recently, I was reading part of the Daniel Morgan public inquiry, and it defined the problem as placing the protection of reputation above fidelity to the truth, especially in public bodies. So, Sam, why do my experiences of this council fit so well with the inquiry's definition of institutional corruption?
Thanks, Joan. I'm not going to comment on the accusation Councillor Burt's made. I think I've given a fulsome comment in relation to question 4 on the questions on notice in relation to his accusations he's made. We've got really clear processes, both for members and officers, and I advise him if he has evidence in which he thinks anybody, both officer or member, have breached those standards, then he's got those clear processes he needs to follow.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. My question, I think, is directed to the portfolio holder, Councillor Jane James, for a change. Firstly, I'm sure, I hope that Councillor James is aware of the national low uptake for the free voter ID certificate, which will be particularly of concern to residents in the local elections. And I note that this isn't just going to affect young people, particularly those under 25. Nationally, there are only about 1,200 people under 25 who have applied according to the government website, but also that is also going to be affecting older people who don't have necessarily a driving license, passport, or ID. So what is the Bretland Council doing to promote the uptake? The second part of it is, are you collecting any data? The third part of my question is, does she feel that democratic services are adequately resourced at the present time? And the last point is a plea for, I know from having been a council a long while, I'm thinking about the staff who may be manning polling stations, etc., and less likely in Bretland, but they may be experiencing a degree of frustration by people who are turned away. And I'm sure I'm not asking to reveal anything confidential about what the monitoring officers and others will be doing in relation to the police and other people, but I just hope we can, I'm sure we are doing this, but we're thinking ahead to protect our staff from any interference and abuse. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you very much. If I can I have a bit of clarification on what you mean by collecting data? What sort of data are you specifically referring to on that one?
Sorry, whilst there's national data councillor, obviously you may collect data which may be obviously anonymised, generalised in terms of whether you will know whether people are of a particular age cohort. You may not be collecting that or required to collect that. You can only obviously do what you're required to do nationally, but that may be helpful. Obviously, you're targeting. I've seen some of the stuff that's going out, but that's just an extra, put an extra burden on democratic services. Thank you.
So firstly, I'm really pleased that you've seen the comms effort that the team have been undertaking, and we're very much working with the national programme on that one. So keying in with the Electoral Commission, because ultimately it is them that is pushing this out. We have had the piece go out in the Transforming Breckland magazine, as has been previously referred to. That goes out to all households. We're also coordinating, the team are with our local parish and town councils to ensure those messages are getting out. Also, there's an A4 double-sided leaflet going out with council tax bills. So again, we're repeatedly trying to hit those residents. And it's about sharing that information and encouraging and educating. In terms of staffing, there is support going on there. There was a lot of training went on by the team previously, prior to the launch of the campaign, to understand that. And that's an ongoing situation. Our uptake at the moment is in line with national and county uptakes. So we're not seeing anything unusual at the moment, but we will continue to get out there. And actually, I ask for everybody's help in this room to continue to have those conversations with our residents on our doorsteps, because we're only there because of the voters. Thank you.
Can I just thank you for your response, and just to note that I'm very pleased as far as postal votes are concerned, if people apply for those, there's no additional new requirements as there are under the voter ID certificate. Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a question for Councillor Webb. Could you give us an update on the mobile food bus, please?
Thank you, Councillor Turner. I've good news at last. The service, not with the mobile food bus, but with an alternative vehicle, will be resuming next Tuesday. The issue has been, and I'm not going to say it's easy, because when we do a food bus, we don't just do cheap food for people in the community. We do a wraparound service, which is really important, that bit, where people have the opportunity, if they've got issues, to go into an area which is private and actually speak about their issues, so we can get things resolved, push ahead, help them. So the challenge has been not so much the vehicle as much as getting somewhere where people can go into a private space. I'm pleased to say that to date, we've got 9 out of 12 village halls and areas actually agreed to going ahead with us using a room which will do this job. The way that things are going to work, it's going to be different. It's not going to be like you get on the bus and it's like a mobile shop. It's going to be the community are going to come forward. They're going to be giving a list. The people in the bus will actually go and get the shopping for them and give them their shopping and ask whether they can help them in any other way. So it's good news. We've got an in-between service coming on the road. I didn't want to leave it for weeks and weeks. I wanted to get on with it, and I wanted to make something work so that we can actually reach out to the people who need in our community. Thank you for asking that. Thanks.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chairman. Just another question for Councillor Webb. Can you tell me how the applications are progressing for the generous funding from Breckland Council for town and villages to celebrate the King's Jubilee? Sorry, coronation.
I don't think he's been on the throne that long. However, yeah, the coronation, really important. Okay, so we've got 2 funds at the moment, which are the celebratory grant scheme, up to £500 for organisations to come forward. That closes on Friday. We've had 40 applications, so it's very, very popular, which I'm pleased to say. We thought it would be, but as I said, it's similar to the Jubilee last year. Everybody was pleased to get together and join with their communities to celebrate this once in a lifetime, we hope, occasion. And the Flagpole match funding grant award scheme is progressing well as well, and that will finish on Friday. I've extended for a week. I thought it was important to extend it for a week, just to make sure that we have swept up all councils that want to apply for a new flagpole and a new flag. So thank you for asking.
Councillor Chapman-Allen.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a short statement, Chairman, and then a question for the leader. Councillor Burt, you have borne a long-standing animus against the leader of this council and the majority party of this council, who do not fit into your profile of what this council should look like. Could I ask the leader if he knows why this is?
No, I don't, Chairman. And I think my earlier statement shows some of those frustrations and disappointments that actually across the political sphere, that all members across this council work collaboratively to achieve and support residents and businesses. And sometimes I think the theatre of full council gets in the way around those opportunities, and it works on a relationship of trust and respect, not just between members and me as the leader, but also members and officers. And unless we've got mutual trust and respect, the organisation can't strive for success, but more importantly, we fail our residents and businesses more importantly. And I think some of the language used in this council and previous council meetings by members isn't helpful and doesn't display the standards which I would expect in the private sector or the voluntary sector.
Councillor Hambridge.
Yes, I have a question for Councillor Cowan. In the written replies that were in answer to questions previously raised, Councillor Burt raised the topic of defaults or arrears on council tax payments. Could he flesh it out for us in what this means?
Thank you, Councillor Hambidge. Yes, I actually can. And in doing so, I think it's to this council's credit that right now, as you can see, we do have some arrears. But at the end of the day, the bottom line question is what are our write-offs? And this council's figure for write-offs as a percentage of the total council tax take is under 0.001%. At the moment, every single member, or every resident, beg your pardon, and that includes us as members, are probably in arrears because we pay by monthly direct debit. And until the last debit payment is collected, we have arrears on our account. And that's the figure that you see in front of you in the answer to that written reply. That's not unusual. It's a statement of fact. And last year, as you can see there in the response, what is the value of council tax debt written off in the current year, 22-23? It was actually £6,080, which is somewhere like about 0.012% of the council tax, which was due. Bear in mind that this council collects something like £90 million of council tax on behalf of the district, the county, police and crime commissioner, and town and parish councils. So I'm very pleased that this council is able to demonstrate that we do our job effectively and efficiently, that our arrears are de minimis in that sense, and that's all credit to the team that we have who are responsible at Anglia Revenues Partnership, an organisation which I'm very proud to say this council set up with others. I think that probably answers your question, Councillor. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Jeremy. Councillor Borrett.
Thank you. A question. Right, that's why it's green. Question for the leader. Listening to the response from Councillor Cowan, would the leader agree with me that it's very disappointing that the council has had to spend £15,000 defending itself against a incorrect challenge from a member, which is literally more than half the amount of the total arrears for council tax.
Thanks, and I did hear someone from a sedentary position say we didn't have to. I think we absolutely do have to, and it's our job to seek that advice from officers. That advice was given to us, and the council then made that decision in relation to that. And I think it comes back to my previous comment, Councillor Borrett, that we as members have to work in partnership with everybody in our community, including officers, in a mutual trust and a respectful way. And I trust the officers' judgment. I respect their advice when it's offered, and therefore that's why council and cabinet and other committees and the commission make those decisions or recommendations and that advice provided. So yes, I am immensely frustrated and disappointed that we have wasted £15,000 on legal fees, which is double the amount of that which we had to write off in arrears.
Councillor Jeremy.
Councillor Jeremy.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, Sam, another one for yourself. Yet again, Sam, Dereham and Thetford have been overlooked by the government's Levelling Up grant scheme with a second rejection of our funding bids. I note in the press that the Conservative Mayor of West Midlands has called for an end to the begging bowl culture, as he said. Given the Levelling Up process is clearly not working for our district under the Tory government, do you continue to support the Levelling Up policy?
Thanks. I absolutely support the Levelling Up agenda in its wider sense, and things such as UK Shared Prosperity Funds, some £1.3 million, Rural Prosperity Fund, another £1 million is all part of that wider Levelling Up agenda. Millions of pounds come into Breckland, in which we as Breckland members are able to dictate where that money is spent. I do agree with the Mayor of the Midlands, Andy Street, and yourself, Terry, that actually I think some of the levers, formulas and data set which government used to determine where that money allocation goes through the Levelling Up funding piece needs some work. And I and other colleagues have raised that already with the Secretary of State and will continue to do so. But in its wider sense, I think it's important that this government has acknowledged that we need to ensure that everybody starts off at a suitable level, both for education, housing and attainment. And that's what the Levelling Up agenda is achieving in a really transparent and open way for everybody. And I hope whatever government is in power over the coming years and decades, that they continue to use the Levelling Up framework for that.
Thank you. I think my question might be for the deputy leader or the leader, whoever wants to take it. It was reported in the press this week that we've received been awarded 1.6 million of government funding, which clearly is good news for the district. One of my businesses in my ward made inquiries in the last couple of days to see if they could apply for the skills funding. I think of that 1.6 million, £500,000 is skills funding, but was disappointed to be told that that funding is not going to be available until April 2024. Does that apply to the whole 1.6 million, the April 2024, or is that just the skills funding element of it, please?
Thanks for the question. So I haven't got the detailed timeline of provision of the programme. So it's a drawdown year on year of that money, Councillor Attewell, and through that position, which was presented back to Cabinet, it's a phased approach for all of that activity. One, to ensure we don't have to increase our resource unnecessarily to help deliver all of those programmes, because if we delivered it in a single year, that would require further FTE and a further cost to residents and businesses across the district. So I will, after this meeting, request that the officers confirm to all members what that programme activity is over the life of that funding stream, so that everyone's aware of what that looks like. In relation to your business in question, I'll ask the officers to reach back out to those to make sure that we're providing support. If it's funding related today, where are there opportunities for further funding, or the apprenticeship programme or others can support to make sure they go from strength to strength.
Councillor Burt.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a question for Councillor Hewitt. He's not here. So, Sam, I'm going to ask you to either answer or elect somebody else to take it on. It's been previously stated that the income from the sale of the Green Britain Centre would be invested in Swaffham. It's specifically in a leisure centre facility. And indeed, money has been allocated as detailed on page 248 in very small writing. However, the figure stated is just £700,000, which begs the question, what happened to the millions and millions of pounds originally invested? Are we the only ones incapable of making a profit from property?
On this occasion, I won't thank you for the question, Councillor Burt, because it's a repetitive question. You raised this some 40 months ago when we were going through that transition of that acquisition. I know that you had meetings with the relevant officers around that, and you'll be aware that it wasn't this Conservative administration who placed that funding bid in for the Green Britain Centre at that moment in time. It was pre-1999 when we took control of this council. So some of those decisions were historical. You have had that information in full detail. If your memory doesn't serve you right, I'll ask the Democratic clerk to provide those previous responses to those questions you've raised, and that will be fulsome. If at any point you're not content with that, please do let Councillor Hewitt know, or the relevant Assistant Director or Director, and we'll follow that up further.
Can I follow up on that?
Are there any other questions?
Councillor Jeremy first.
Councillor Jeremy.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies, I'm not. You've caught me off guard. I didn't prepare a third one, but you know me, I've always got something to say. You know, but I won't pass because you know you'll end up with Tim again. Apologies, I don't know if this is Sarah or Helen, but it's about Serco. And I've had a number of complaints from residents recently about aggressive cutting back of trees. We have a very good policy of this council of wanting to plant new trees, but I'm very concerned at the lack of care of existing trees, which are obviously far more better for the, far more beneficial for the environment than a tiny little tree. And I just want some reassurance really that we have a policy of trying to safeguard and maintain trees as best we can, not simply cutting them back to bare stumps, as has been the case in Thetford. We have got to adopt a conservation approach, and if they are dangerous or diseased or dying, and mend them if we possibly can and safeguard them, not just completely remove them. And I'd like some reassurance, and I'm sure residents would too.
Thank you for your question, Terry. Yes, we do have a policy in place, and we're also looking at a local policy to replace trees. I would like to see us replacing trees where we've had to remove them for safety purposes. And I know, Councillor Land, you have brought up problems in Thetford, and you have now been resolved, and I think you were happy with the result there. So yes, the answer to your question.
Councillor Atterwell, any further questions?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure who needs to answer this one, but I'll ask it and then Sam can direct who needs to answer it. I was alerted recently by a resident that Breckland Council has applied for £60,000 of government funding under their Changing Places scheme to help refurbish, rebuild, etc. toilets. And when I asked to see the bid, I was a little bit surprised to see that the funding was for Banham Zoo. And now Banham Zoo is great, and I think it's great that we support local businesses and a big tourist attraction. But looking at the funding available, we could have applied for 3 lots of £60,000. I'm just wondering, did we reach out to any of the town councils? I know in Dereham, I'm continually getting complaints about the state of the toilets in there, albeit they are managed by the town council. And I'm just wondering if there was any reaching out to those town councils to find out whether they would like an application to go in to assist them as well. And if we didn't reach out, why not? Thank you.
So I haven't got the detail to hand, Councillor Atwell, in relation to the Changing Places bid. As you're aware, Banham Zoo operates as a charity rather than a business in its entirety. And I'm pleased that Breckland Council, through the last 3 years predominantly, has supported that fantastic charity. We're doing some incredible work for animal welfare and wider animal understanding of how animals operate. We've secured funding previously through DEFRA to ensure that that charity has some longevity, and under the change in places, it's very much, as you'll know from looking at His Majesty's Government website, is linked around giving those disabled support for those individuals. So the particular grant in relation to Banham is around winch support within those premises, so that anybody who needs that requirement to be able to winch out of a chair for any domestic requirements or changes to their clothing or wider ablutions can take place. In relation to the question for town councils, I wasn't aware whether we did or didn't, so I will look into that for you. But likewise, I'm not aware whether town councils were restricted themselves from making those bids directly to government. So I will look into that and follow that up. I just want to state that actually I'm not aware of any town councils formally writing to me as leader of the council or the relevant officers to raise their concerns into the standard of their assets. And as much as I'm immensely interested in everything other tiers of government do, I wouldn't necessarily want town council to think that I'm poking my nose into their business, but I will find out for you and I will get back to you.
Councillor Burt.
Could I just reply back to my question?
Have you got a question?
I've got another question if you want another question. Got a couple if you like. In the notice questions, we have specified that the optimum air quality is anything below 1,000 parts per million of CO2. Just wondered where that had come from, being as the academic experts seem to suggest that twice the outside level and therefore 800 parts per million is the acceptable level. That was answered by Paul Hewitt. So again, whether you'd like to nominate somebody.
Obviously, the responses are contained within question 5 of the written notice, Councillor Burt. If you're concerned around some of the monitoring devices us or the Environment Agency are using in relation to that, then please raise that and I will raise it with the relevant agencies and bodies. But I think the responses within question 5 on questions on notice are detailed, and I'm afraid it's not my area of expertise. I bow down to those subject matter experts.
Right. Has anybody got any further questions? Councillor Jeremy.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a question for Councillor Cowan. I noticed on Twitter last night, Phil, that the Conservatives have reselected Liz Truss for the next general election. Given that news, will you be revising the estimates for inflation in next year's budget?
Oh, I have to confess, I didn't see that particular Twitter announcement. So thank you for informing me of that. I'm sure other colleagues in the room may be well aware of that. The answer to the question is actually no. Our budgets are our budgets, and we're actually coming up to those. I think it's agenda item 12 and then 13, probably, preceded by number 11 as well. So you'll have to wait and see. Thank you.
Right, that was the last question we can take under the time. So we'll now move to item 8, which is a motion which has been received from Councillor Morton. Could I ask Councillor Morton to explain the reasoning behind his notice of the motion, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And firstly, I'd like to thank council officers who have helped prepare what is a modified, hopefully practical version of the Fair Tax Declaration. Paying tax is often presented as a burden, but it shouldn't be, especially by recipients of public funding, such as ourselves. Tax helps pay for a huge array of critical public services, such as policing, defence, education, health, social care, and many more at all levels of government. The Fair Tax Mark provides a way for us to demonstrate good tax conduct to our residents and inform our suppliers of the standards we expect from them. I propose full council notes also that around 17.5% of public contracts in the UK have been won by companies with links to tax havens. And this is conservatively estimated, and I think it's a very conservative estimate, that losses from multinational profit shifting could be costing the UK some £7 billion per annum in lost revenue. So the fair tax mark then offers a means for business to demonstrate good tax conduct and has been secured by organisations with a combined annual income of 50 billion and more than 6,500 outlets. I think the proposal really should be that full council resolves to approve the councils for fair tax declaration, lead by example and demonstrate good practice in our tax conduct right across our activities, include in our standard terms the fair tax declaration, and ensure that contractors implement IR35 robustly and pay a fair share of employment taxes. Also, the council should not use offshore vehicles for the purchase of land and property, especially where this leads to reduced payments of stamp duty, and undertake due diligence to ensure that not-for-profit structures are not being used inappropriately as an artificial device to reduce the payment of tax and business rates. We should demand clarity on the ultimate beneficial ownership of suppliers and their consolidated profit and loss position, and promote fair tax mark certification for any business in which we have a significant stake and where corporation tax is due. And do support calls for urgent reform of UK law to enable local authorities to better penalise poor tax conduct and reward good tax conduct through their procurement policies. This will go, I think, towards demonstrating to residents the equality and fairness of the system, which is vital to our democratic structures. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder to that proposal, please?
I would like to second this proposal. The size of the global economy has almost quadrupled over the past 30 years, yet the gap between rich and poor gets wider, with a massive increase in wealth at the top, while the total wealth owned by those at the bottom is falling. Since 2015, the richest 1% have more wealth than the rest of the world combined. Such extreme economic inequality is fueled by an epidemic of tax evasion and avoidance that has reached an unprecedented scale. While millions across the world live in poverty, rich individuals and companies exploiting the secrecy provided by tax havens are continuing to dodge their taxes, depriving the poorest people from being able to provide services. Since 2014, a large number of documents have been leaked, unveiling how tax evasion and avoidance have become standard business practice across the globe. Through a complex and loosely regulated tax system, multinational companies and rich individuals actively seek to increase their profits by storing them offshore and avoiding paying taxes in their countries. Tax havens are the heart of this system. They allow massive amounts of wealth to flow untaxed and in secret out of reach from tax authorities and regulators. Those who should be paying the most tax instead maximize their profits, in part by paying as little tax as possible. They do this by using tax havens or making countries compete to provide tax breaks, exemptions, and lower rates. And while some of the tax dodging practices are illegal, many exploit weaknesses in today's tax system without breaking any laws. Tax evasions deprive governments of the resources they need to provide vital public services and infrastructure, such as schools, hospitals, etc. Governments either have to cut back on these services or make up the shortfall by collecting higher taxes from everyone else. Both options see the poorest people lose out and equality gaps grow. This global system of tax avoidance is sucking the life out of the welfare states in the rich world. And this is even more devastating on the poorer countries. While the powerful get away with paying little or nothing, ordinary citizens are left to foot the bill for government spending. As mentioned, public contracts have been won by companies with links to tax havens. If we are going to end extreme inequality, we must call on world leaders, governments and councils to end the era of tax havens and put a stop to the secrecy that enables rich individuals and international companies to avoid paying their fair share of tax. It is our responsibility to make sure that we are investing.
Can you
ethically.
wind it up, please?
Governments need to leave, but everyone must make it their business to fight poverty. Let us, as a council, join the fight in equality by supporting this motion for a fair tax declaration. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Chairman. I've just got a question really for Councillor Morton. Whilst I support the principle of this, I'd just like to draw your attention to number 3 in the resolution. And that concerns me a little bit, the way that's worded. Including council standard terms and conditions, ensure contractors implement IR35 robustly and pay a fair share of employment taxes. So I suppose 2-part question, how do we do that? And what's considered fair? Because I suspect that if you ask a lot of employers when they get their tax bills in, when at that precise moment they know how much tax they've got to pay, they would tell you, damn, this is unfair. Should it not be worded differently to say something like take out and pay legally obligated employment taxes, something to that effect? Because I think fair is a subjective term, and I'd be interested to know what the council solicitors think about how we could actually, would that stand up in any contract that we award to third parties?
Rob.
Chairman, if I may, because I appreciate Councillor Attwell's asking a question of Councillor Morton. Under the Constitution, it says Councillor Morton can only speak again on the motion as a right to reply at the end of the debate. I'd be happy to offer discretion if members of this council see fit, whereby Councillor Morton is able to take questions and have more of a debate rather than a series of statements. I'm not adhering to the Constitution in black and white in that point. So,
sorry, I think yes, but I think probably we've got a lawyer in the room. I'd probably like an opinion on that, about how you can actually implement that. Would that stand up in an employment contract?
Just procedurally, these papers have been available to members beforehand for them to satisfy any questions of a technical nature. This is a debate as to the merits of the motion, and therefore I would suggest that we stick with what the Constitution says, and if there is a proposal to alter the motion in any way, then Councillor Attwell is perfectly free to make a proposal to alter it, and if he can find a seconder, council to vote on it.
yeah, Councillor Burrow, is clear in the Constitution that the proposer of the motion has the right to reply at the end of the debate on the said motion and doesn't speak until that point in the motion. I've picked up as previous motions have been discussed, there's been a frustration with that element of the Constitution because it prohibits debate and to and fro across the chamber. But that is how the Constitution is written. So if members are minded, will follow the Constitution, and the right of reply and answer to any questions Councillor Morton would come at the end of the debate. If you could take a record of the questions.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Cowan.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for allowing me to put a question here. It's a bit more than a question, it's a little bit more explanation as well, as you might imagine. As a council, we do lobby through the Local Government Association, central government and HMRC and other agencies to ensure that all companies, particularly those with whom we undertake business, comply in full with the requirements of the law of this land. And that's a very important point to recognise. And yes, we could, of course, look at the fair tax mark, but and there is a but here. The advice received is as follows, that we could probably receive challenges because suppliers could easily argue that they do comply with the law already in existence. Tax avoidance, let's be very clear about this, tax avoidance is not illegal, it's tax planning. Tax evasion, however, is a fundamentally different topic. And this council would look very carefully at those who fulfilled that last part of that equation. But we cannot compel or require people with whom we do business to work other than within the law of this country. We do have a legal right to include social, environmental and ethical considerations in our procurement strategy, and we do. We do indeed. But please remember that the Fair Tax Mark scheme is a voluntary scheme. And suppliers of all sizes have no obligation legally to comply with the voluntary scheme, although many do. And that's their business. And far be it from this council to direct and instruct people who supply us with our services, many of whom are local suppliers, to do otherwise. And finally, I think it's very important for us to recognise that should we incorporate the fair tax scheme, there is always a potential that that would lead to fewer suppliers submitting bids, particularly if we made it a mandatory requirement of those who supply us with services. So I think in conclusion, I would just like to say that there's an awful lot of things we can do in this council out with the fair tax scheme. We have a duty to our residents and our businesses to ensure that we provide value for money at all levels, at all times, for the services which we supply to them. And we do so without fear or favour. And as you will see, and we come to further items throughout this agenda, that we do so in a very workmanlike and positive manner. So in answer to your debate point, Councillor Morton, I would suggest that we stay where we are. Thank you.
Councillor Attawell.
Yeah, could I just pick up on something that Councillor Cowan has just said, because you did just state that advice received says that this wouldn't be enforceable.
Can you stop there, please?
Sorry, Councillor Oxwell, you're only allowed to speak once on the motion. Each member is allowed to speak once, apart from the mover of the motion, who has the chance of right of reply.
Thanks, Chairman. I've got a couple of questions for the end for the proposer and or seconder of this motion. One, did they seek advice from the officers of this council around the legality of this motion and whether we were able to implement it as a council? Two, did they seek advice from senior officers of this council around our existing processes around contracts? We've already heard today from Councillor Cowan that we include social, environmental and ethical considerations in our procurement strategy. So therefore, I'd want to understand what that looks like. Three, have they understood the ability and extra resource it would take to implement this type of policy within the council? And fourth, have they seen advice from officers around their interpretation from other councils who've implemented this since it was rolled out on a chain email in 2014 as to how other councils are able to implement this successfully in other parts of the country?
Councillor Jeremy.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Cowan referred to advice that had been received, and the leader just queried about advice. Could you confirm whether that advice was provided to the Conservative group, and if so, I understand the Constitution requires it to be provided to other groups on the council.
No, I can actually tell you that it was provided to me in response to my inquiries.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Borrett.
Councillor Borrett.
Thank you.
Oh,
Obviously,
no, hang on, you've
Sorry, you
already
can't. You've
no,
already-
that I raised a technical response. I
Ah,
wasn't
okay.
debating the motion, so I hope I'd be allowed to speak. Thank you. Obviously, this is a debate on a motion, and I'd just like to say a couple of things. I did listen to Councillor Dowling's quite impassioned speech, actually. It was full of emotion, and I quite accept where she's coming from. However, there are a couple of things about this motion that I cannot support, so I will be voting against it. And that is the extra burden put on Breckland. One of the things that Councillor Dowling mentioned was that companies dodging taxes without, and I wrote this down, without breaking any laws. I don't think it's in the business of Breckland to be policing people's tax. That's for national government and HMRC. If Breckland is to step outside the normal procurement process used by councils, the only outcome for that will be increased expense for the residents of Breckland. One of the things that Councillor Dowling said, that the behaviour would lead to ordinary citizens, and I wrote this down as well, footing the bill. And that's exactly what would happen here. Breckland would put itself outside the normal procurement process. As the leader intimated, it would lead to us probably receiving less tenders for work, and also a huge amount of work and staff that would be necessary to investigate fully every single company that we would have dealings with, because we wouldn't be able to rely on the fact that they were just not breaking the law, which is the situation that we are at the moment. Now, ultimately, all of that is going to have to be footed by the taxpayer. You know, I have great confidence that the tax authorities in this country are able to do that job for Breckland Council without us having to do it as well. And therefore, though I absolutely accept the place where Councillor Dowling is coming from, and I accept her total integrity in this matter, I do feel that it would be unworkable and unfair to put the Breckland Council taxpayer at the bottom of the bill for policing something that should be done elsewhere. So I accept the place where it's coming from, but I cannot support the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Land.
Thank you. Have the council solicitors looked at this issue and provided advice? And if they have, could we know, please, what their opinion was? Thank you.
I can confirm that I've not been involved in the discussions around the motion or the subject matter, and neither have I asked external solicitors to help either.
Councillor Burt.
Thank you, Chairman. It appears that what is the picture that is being portrayed is one that this is going to be particularly arduous for this council to pursue, whereas that's not the case. We are the work is already done. We're just saying that we should prefer companies which subscribed to this scheme. And if there are fewer tenders, well, maybe there'll be fewer tenders because some of those businesses prefer not to, because they actively don't want to subscribe to this scheme. So I think it's important that we do not penalise good law-abiding businesses who take their moral obligations seriously. And this motion is a fine way to show them our support. Who could possibly take the view that it's acceptable to offshore profits to avoid contributing to tax? And at the same time, these companies that do that benefit from the infrastructure that those taxes pay for. So I will be supporting this motion.
Sorry, Chairman, just a point of order. From our position as a council, I'm concerned that the member in question has just insinuated that providers of services to our residents and businesses are undertaking illegal activity. And it's already been mentioned, tax avoidance is not illegal, tax evasion is. So I would like some advice from the solicitor about accusation that this council has acted illegally by allowing contractors who have acted illegally to provide services to residents and business. I think that needs clearing up.
To be honest, I wasn't aware that there was an accusation being made. I think it was just a comment.
Point of order, Chairman, can I just have clarity, please, that all services provided to residents and businesses across this district are contracts which are procured legally within the framework of law.
Leader, I know the comment. I think I don't believe that was what was being said by Councillor Burt. So I think we're fine to record the comments that have been made by Councillor Burt and move on.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll try and take all the questions. If I forget them, let me know. Councillor Attewell's comment, I think, is correct. It could do with some clarification, but that's how it stands. My assumption would be that officers would review what a fair share of employment tax is. It's rather a case of when something is wrong, it's evident. If it's just marginally, we're not going to pursue that. This is a broad stroke approach. And I think that applies to one or two of the other comments. Will it cost us more money? It may well do when people first put in a tender with us, and we want to look at if we've adopted this motion, we would have to create a bit more paperwork. Yes, I can't deny that, but I don't think it would be ongoing a big cost. What would come back is that we will be sure that nationally and locally, everyone is paying a fair share and a proper full amount of tax. I'm not accusing anybody at the moment of anything illegal, if I can make that clear, but just some people are avoiding tax, which is legal, but we would like to see them pay a proper share. And you might ask, what's a proper share? I think, again, it's a case of when you see people using offshore tax havens, which are legal, that isn't what we want to be supporting. We want that money to be coming back into Breckland and benefiting everyone. So I think the comments that have been made about extra costs and will it be workable, I think they can be done. And I think it really reflects a failure of our tax laws to keep up with the skills, if you like, of very educated lawyers and accountants who can move faster. That's their job, I understand that, but I think we should show what our preference is for.
Thank you. Now we are now going to, there being no amendments or whatever. All in favour? Yeah. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Motion is defeated. Thank you. Right. The minutes listed under this is item 9, are for information, but if any member has any questions regarding any of these, minutes, please speak now. Councillor Atwell.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to direct you to page 43 of the report pack for the Overview and Scrutiny Commission meeting on the 1st of December. Overview and Scrutiny discussed fuel poverty and credit unions very extensively on that day. And there was a whole list of items listed on page 43 that were recommended that Cabinet take that up, and there would be reports produced. I'm just wondering where we're at with that, because I haven't seen any of the responses coming back to members as yet, and time's getting away. We're sort of 3 months on. Could I have an update on that, please?
Defer somewhat to Rob. He's just pointed to him, so I'm going to stop.
My understanding, Councillor Atwell, is it's coming to the next Cabinet meeting, and I've just had a nod from the lead officer, so it'll be at the next Cabinet meeting.
Councillor Burt.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very pleased that we are actually able to ask questions this time, and that was the one that had been investigated and confirmed that questions are permitted. So I'd like to take you to page 102 in minute 8/22 of the Governance and Audit report. Our CO2 reduction plan only achieves half of our objective by 2035, and yet the risk of failure has not changed since that has been established. I mean, it was claimed there that it's a long-term risk, and that implies that there's enough time. But until the assessment has been made, we don't know if we have enough time. So when and how will the risk of failing to deliver our climate emergency pledge be made?
Councillor Crane, can you respond?
Thank you. No, I don't think I can respond to that. I think that's far too technical for me. Could somebody else please respond? One of the officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so Councillor Burt's correct. The risk is identified over a long-term period. There are a number of actions that were confirmed within the sustainability plan. Councillor Burt's correct that there is a gap there, and officers continue to assess new ways to fill that gap as new technology comes on board. So we are constantly refreshing and reviewing our assessment of risk associated with the delivery of that.
The minutes, as I say, are presented to you, and the recommendations under minute 24/23 will be discussed under agenda item 12. Members can discuss any matters contained within these minutes, but if any private or confidential information is mentioned as contained within the restricted minutes on this page is 290 to 291 of this agenda pack, you please have to stop the members from speaking. Sorry, you won't be able to speak on that, as we will then raise that under item 19. So the recommendations on this minute number 11 to 23 will be discussed under agenda item 11, and the recommendations under minute 15/23, that's on the governance and audit, will be discussed under agenda item 14. We just might note the minutes. Under item 10, could I ask Councillor Gordon Bambridge, the Executive Member for Housing and Homelessness, to present the report and then propose and quote the recommendations which can be found on page 123 of the agenda pack.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to bring this to the council today. There are recommendations that we accept money from central government and we spend it in the appropriate way, that we do require some match funding, and that the council delegates to the Deputy Chief Executive and myself the decisions on the details of this. Everything is there before you on page 123 to 125, I think, and I'm very happy to try and answer any questions you may have on them.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder to that proposal? Councillor Borrett. Any questions? Councillor Attewell.
Thank you for that report, Councillor Banbridge. Could I just ask you a question on item 2 of the recommendations, please? Now, I think it's absolutely imperative that we do what we can to support Ukrainian residents and those coming from Afghanistan. But I note down here that you're suggesting that we allocate Section 106 available funding towards this effort, which I think will be our contribution towards what the government are giving us. Have you got any idea how much of that Section 106 you're looking to allocate? And can you reassure residents, Indigenous residents of Breckland, who would probably think that money would be allocated to affordable housing in the wider community? Are we taking away from that pot to put into this one? Can you just explain that a little bit more for people who are watching this live, please?
We have, if I could start back a little bit, we have a legal duty to provide, for instance, for Ukrainian displaced persons who are living in the district, should they become homeless, a duty. So that is already there, it's a fact. And we have discussed this, I think, at earlier council and cabinet meetings. What we're seeing here is the government have come to us and said that we recognise there is a burden that will be placed upon you, and we're seeking to assist you with that burden. The money that we spend, some of it may well be Section 106 money. No, I can't tell you how much as I sit here today. I'll try and find out, but I think that's a figure that we may not know for a few months, until a few months' time. The key to this is we will have to find some. It will be capital money, which the council have established that it can find.
Councillor Borrett.
Thank you. I just wanted to support this. We've been allocated 1,274,000, if what I read from the papers is correct, from central government. So I think the Breckland should take it, because that is the recommendation. You know, however you want to cut the cookie, it is about providing homes for people who otherwise wouldn't have them. So I would hope that all members support this. And I would expect Breckland to step up and do its duty and find the balance, and that's what's requested in this paper. So I give it my full support.
Right, we'll now move to the vote on this. So can I see all those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Right. Moving on to item 11, could I ask Councillor Phil Cowan, the Executive Member for Finance and Revenue and Benefits, to present the report and then propose and quote the recommendations, which can be found on page 129 of the agenda pack.
Thank you, Chairman. Colleagues, each year we're obliged to review and agree our Treasury management strategy and reflect any changes that may be required as a consequence of guidance received from the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy, or CIPFA, as you can read in the papers. As on previous occasions when I presented this annual report, I'm minded to advise members that the CIPFA guidance is not actually guidance, but a requirement placed upon us. And before us, we have a report that outlines Council's prudential indicators for 2023-24 to 2025-26 and sets out the expected Treasury operations for this period and requests approval for the Treasury Management Policy, Strategy and Prudential Indicators for 2023 to 2025 to 2026. It is clearly a technical paper. So should you have any questions, then I'm sure that it isn't Matthew who's the author who's with us today. He has a clash, but we do have Alison Chubbuck with us, our 151 officer, who will be able to respond following this presentation. Thank you.
Can we have a seconder for this proposal? Councillor Kaibo.
Chairman, if there are no questions, perhaps I can move the motion.
Councillor Attewell, did you have a question? Councillor Burt.
Thank you, Councillor Cowan. I have little to add to this from the discussions that we had at committees, but I would like us to see if we could investigate the very low cost of Public Works Loan Board funding, especially to help our carbon reduction plans. These loans, the charges on these loans are lower than inflation. So as time goes by, the capital value becomes smaller in real terms at a faster rate than the interest that we pay. And I think we should look more closely at using those to achieve, for example, our Breckland 2035 policy.
Chairman, if I can come back on that one. Yes, I understand exactly what you're saying, but Alison, I'm sure, will advise us of the rules and regulations around which we have to function as a council with regard to borrowing. And I don't know if Alison, you wish to comment further on that.
Councillor Kaibo.
Thank you, Chairman. This matter was well discussed at Governance and Audit, and as regards PWLB rates of finance, we don't have any need for external funding because we can meet our net borrowing requirement from within our own resources. Thank you.
Any more questions in respect of that? Right, we can then move to the vote. All in favour?
Excuse me, Chairman, I haven't proposed the motion yet.
Sorry. I thought you had.
No. So, colleagues, there are a number of recommendations before us. These are: one, that the Treasury Management Strategy for the years 23-24 to 25-26 at Appendix A is approved. Number two, that the minimum, beg your pardon, revenue provision, MRP, statement contained within Appendix A, which sets out the Council's policy on MRP, is approved. Number three, that the prudential and local indicators and limits contained within Appendix A, tables 1 to 11, are approved. And four, that the investment strategy 23-24, Appendix B, and the detailed criteria included in Appendix B1 is approved. And five, that the Treasury Management Policy at Appendix B2 is approved. Thank you, Chairman.
All in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. These recommendations have been approved. What I'd like to do now is propose that we have a 10-minute recess. Could I have a proposer and a seconder for that? Councillor Sherwood. All those in favour?